Coming to you live from an undisclosed Airbnb a mile from Mackey Arena. It's another episode of The 10, your favorite Big Ten betting show. I'm your host, Greg Waddell. That's Doug Kezirian, and we've got a great show for you today. Before we get into everything on the Wednesday night slate and beyond, I do want to inform you we've got an awesome bonus bet opportunity for you here at College Sports Rush. The second half of the conference schedule is heating up, and Bet Rivers is giving bonus bets to use as we come down the stretch. You can get a $10 bonus bet to use on college hoops with the code CSR216. Go to your Bet Rivers app, enter the bonus code CSR216. Get that $10 bonus bet to use on any college basketball game. This offer goes until March 8th. You must be 21. Eligible players only. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, we do want to look back at last night just a little bit. There was a lot going on in this conference. As I alluded to it, I was in attendance for Michigan at Purdue, a battle of the preseason number one team in the country versus the current number one team in the country. My takeaway, Michigan is really, really good. Doug, what did you see in that game last night?
It was Michigan firing on all cylinders in a lot of ways. Now, there was some apprehension just because the Wolverines haven't really delivered on the road consistently for a team that has the skill level that they do in the number one ranking. But some of that, it was connected to just where they were in the season, right? The peaks and valleys. But they did have some bugaboos on the road, but that's a very different situation than this game. We can't just use, especially in a sport like college basketball and college football that have huge variance in point spreads, like a range, right? Like going on the road as a 2-point favorite versus like 15 and a half at Northwestern, completely different handicaps. So, yes, they almost lost at Penn State, which is just crazy to think about. But that's a very different ATS result than going to Michigan. Let's say they lost by like 5 or something like that. Those are just two different games, even though they're both technically on the road ATS. So I expected a big effort. I leaned that way. I just felt that Purdue couldn't really hang with Michigan's offense and the size the Wolverines had could neutralize sort of Purdue's size. And that's really how it played out, just the more consistent scoring spurts that the Wolverines had. And they played really well. I mean, there's also like just, I don't want to say a luck factor, but the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, you hit shots, you don't, and then things can go that way. Like we saw in the Big 12 a couple nights ago, Iowa State hit those ridiculous shots down the stretch, closed the game on a 17-4 run. It's just unsustainable in the next game for the Cyclones. So that stuff's just going to happen. So Michigan obviously had the big run in the first half, opened up the lead, and the better team won, and it didn't really matter where the game was.
Yeah, it's a make or miss game. And if Michigan's going to make 13 threes, shoot over 50%, there aren't too many teams in the country that will be able to keep up with that. Thought Braden Smith was really bothered by the size of Michigan's guards. The Axel Lendeborg picking him up full court for much of that game. That's just a tough team that clearly has a gene to it that they get up for the big ones. And maybe they're at their most vulnerable against the Northwesterns and the Penn States in this league. I don't know how many more of those we have coming. They've got Duke this weekend, and a game I'm circling. We'll do coverage of it on this very program next week. Michigan at Illinois is going to be interesting. Illinois, the one team that can space those Michigan bigs out with a lot of size and skill and NBA talent. Should be a fun one in Champaign as Michigan tries to close out their conference championship. All right. Any other takeaways from Tuesday night? I saw Mick Cronin was making headlines again, being grumpy. Any thoughts?
Well, I do not think that was the worst question he's been asked in the history of his coaching career. I think it was maybe worded incorrectly, but I think the gist of it was accurate. I probably have asked a worse question before, but it's a lonely feeling. And, I think Cronin was like kind of soft about it after the fact, but for him to just ask that kind of question and be such a bully about it, he could have very easily just been shorter and just been like, look, I'm not worried about a student section of another school and just move on. Right. But he had to drag it out and be just a thorn in the side. My buddy texted me during the game late. He's like, oh, he's going to get fired. I'm like, nah, I think the school's too cheap. They're not going to eat salary. Like they're actually spending in football, but I think he's got some slack on the rope there, but they just don't have the horses. And I played them first half because I thought they could hang around, but obviously it was a spot for Sparty as well. This UCLA team's not very good. And we kind of know who they are, right? They went to whatever it was, double overtime with Indiana at home. That's where they are in this conference. Michigan State, sort of the bridge between the elite teams and the middle of the pack teams. They're that one, that there's a common grid we see in social media, like the tiers, right? They're not on the top line. I think they're the only one on that second line, and then it's like the UCLA's of the world of the Big Ten in that next tier with Indiana and whatnot. I think literally Sparty's the only one on that second level.
Yeah,
Maybe Iowa.
a year ago, Michigan State was the champion in this league. They win it by 3 games. This year, MSU might as well be measuring stick university because you find out just how good the opponent is based on what they do to Michigan State. This UCLA team, they've won enough games. They're probably an NCAA tournament fixture at this point, but I certainly do not want to buy the Bruins down the stretch based on the effort I saw in East Lansing last night. Okay, we've got 3 games for Wednesday night that we are going to get into here and give you our best bets for along the way. We're also going to take a look ahead at a big rivalry game on Friday at the end of the show. But first, let's start with tonight. We have Rutgers at Penn State. Nittany Lions favored by 4.5 at home here. Our total is 148.5. Anything you like, Doug?
Oh, it's quite the barn burner in the Big Ten, and you don't want to wait till 7 p.m. Eastern. You get this an hour early, so I know it's really just everyone rushing home from work to see this game. I have to take Rutgers in the points. I don't think much of either team, but I think Penn State coming back home off the trip out west, first game, and Rutgers was at home, and now they're like a short travel. I think you just got to grab the points in an ugly game. And both these teams kind of shoot themselves in the foot, but little momentum with Rutgers coming off the win, but they kind of caught the Terps in a bad spot. I don't think Penn State's that great. They surprise me every now and then, but I was also trying to think who's the worst team in the conference. It might be Penn State. It might be Maryland. I don't know. But I have to grab the 4.5. That's just too many.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Just at a first glance, the number feels a little bit big. I would have thought maybe Penn State minus 2.5 here. The problem is I really have no interest in taking Rutgers plus anything. Like you could give me 10 and I don't know that I could even talk myself into it with this group. Spot wise too, I like your point with Penn State, like coming home from the travel. That's always a good time to look to fade teams. Rutgers has not won a lot of games here. For Rutgers to be coming off a victory, that's typically a spot I probably look to sell them in as well. I think it's going to be a really ugly basketball game. I don't know what to do with the total either. I wish I had more real handicap analysis for you here. But these two teams are
Feels
just
high. Doesn't it feel a little high?
The gut for me says it's high and it's too many points. And I just don't like either enough to invest in it. It's one of those things. I just have nothing to attach myself to either on the Rutgers side, which I don't know. If I was going to play it, it's probably the under for me. Is that what you would lean to most here, Doug? Or are you going to stick with Rutgers plus?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like one team's going to be in the 60s, so that's why I like the under a little bit. But, Penn State, they can give up 80 something, so who knows?
Yeah, I guess this is like one of our miserable just hope for chaos games. It's not going to be on my card. I can promise you that. Let's turn to another
By the way, it's
somewhat.
the first of 2 meetings remaining. There's like 5 games left in the regular season schedule, and that 2 of them are against each other. So
Shout out
that's
to
nice.
the Big Ten schedule makers, man. They really know how to get us up for these late season heroics. There's another one that's lacking in sex appeal tonight. Maryland at Northwestern here. The Purple Cats favored by 7.5 in Evanston. Total is 141.5. What do you think?
I mean, this number's big, but Terps are bad, and their defense is bad, and I don't know. I mean, laying this kind of lumber with Northwestern just seems like a death wish, but I also don't want the points either. This is definitely a pass for me.
Yeah, I think you could take pretty much everything we just said about Rutgers and Penn State and apply it here, right? There's too many points here. It's a total that I'm kind of looking at twice, and yet there's nothing to gravitate toward on either side that makes you rush to place the bet. I think I am going to get there with Maryland plus 7.5, simply because this is an enormous number, and I think Northwestern is the better team. I think Nick Martinelli is the best player on the court, very clearly. This youth movement, we've talked about it in past episodes, that Chris Collins has embarked on is probably going to pay off in the long term for this program. But I don't think it's necessarily the right move to try and win these basketball games. And give Northwestern credit. They threw a punch against Michigan with a wire-to-wire cover in that game and outplayed them for 30 minutes. That got my attention from a group that I was really downplaying. But I also think we can look at this Northwestern team since the youth movement and pick out some pretty embarrassing, ugly performances, including 49 points against Nebraska last week. The thing with Northwestern that's clear right now in these last two games, even if they do storm out the gates and have a great start, they've been getting destroyed in second halves. Michigan went on like a 30-0 run. Nebraska, I think they literally won that second half by like 25 points. So I might look at Maryland's second half here, or maybe even a live bet with the Terps. I don't hate Maryland pregame at 7.5 and just hope that Diggy Coit can make some jumpers on the road in this game. Finally, to a bigger game here, Illinois at USC on Wednesday night. The first of two in Illinois' West Coast trip. They will go to UCLA this weekend, but they are 9.5-point favorites in their first West Coast game at the Trojans. Total here is 151.5. I will note, in terms of injury scout for Illinois right now, Stojakovic is still questionable. There have been some ominous comments from Brad Underwood, originally implying he might not make the trip to the West Coast. Can confirm he was on the plane and is practicing with the team again. So your guess is as good as mine what Stojakovic's status will be in this game. We know that Kylan Boswell is back with a massive club on his hand from their most recent game. What do you like here, Doug?
A whole lot. This is just, I think USC and Wisconsin are two teams I just can't really get right this year. I haven't quite sworn them off, but I almost have. And the Illinois, like you mentioned it, the health factor with some key players. This Trojans team's nothing to write home about, but the must bus sort of kind of straightens things out a little bit sometimes. And it's a big number, 9.5. Illinois in a vacuum should cover this, but the Trojans sometimes play above their weight. So I just don't want to get involved. I'm interested in the over maybe, but I just think it's kind of like a weird trip. And I think Illinois is trying to just figure out some things, and they did against Indiana. And now they just want to just go take care of business and kind of win 2 games out west before they host Michigan. So I'm not in a rush to play this. I just think I don't know what I'm going to get with the Trojans more than anything. So no real play for me here.
I look at the home team plus the points here as the lean. It's just a lean for me right now, not an official play. But I think in terms of timing for the West Coast trip for Illinois, this is a rough time to have to go west for 2 games. And this is not the Oregon-Washington trip that's been a little bit easier for these top-tier teams. This is USC and UCLA and Muss and Mick Cronin, and at home, those teams are tough. They can play you tough and pick you off. And I have a gut feel here Illinois is going to have a letdown moment in one of these 2 games. I'm just kind of battling myself on if it's USC or UCLA. Matchup-wise, I actually do think USC is probably more concerning for Illinois just because I think they can beat up the Bruins on the boards. But, it's a weird moment in the season for Illinois. They're 2 games back in the loss column of Michigan, staring at a Michigan game in 10 days that you can't tell me they're not looking ahead to a little bit, and trying to just keep treading water to get there and have that game mean something while Michigan keeps winning. I think there's some gravity to that. And I think at a certain point, you're just going to see this team sort of slip up along the way. Like I said, if USC was fully healthy here, they've had so much injury in and out with Baker Mazar and with Rodney Rice this year. I think it would be an auto play for me, but the line also wouldn't be 9.5. You've got to talk yourself into an Elijah Arenas big game, but I think against Illinois, they're so passive defensively. I think it's one of those matchups where he could have some success, especially with Kylan still with a club on his hand. So I lean the Trojans, not an official play. Let's go to the Friday rivalry game quickly before we give our best bets. It's Indiana at Purdue. Quick turnaround for the Boilermakers. Again, hosting Michigan on Tuesday, now hosting the Hoosiers on Friday, Darren DeVries got the best of Matt Painter in Assembly Hall earlier this season. So this is obviously a get-up rivalry spot. It's a bounce-back spot for Purdue. It's a revenge spot for Purdue if they needed any more motivation to beat their in-state rival. My only question here, are they running out of gas at all now that they're formally eliminated from this Big Ten race? We project the line at 10.5, and we project the total at 149.5. What are your early thoughts, Doug?
I have to take the points here. And I know it's a revenge angle and all that. It's just too many, especially when the Hoosiers can shoot, like they can shoot. Now, can is the operative word. There's no guarantee they're going to hit their shots, but it's just too many points. You touched on it. What's the gas tank right now for the Boilermakers? It's a lot of points. We see in these games like the revenge angle doesn't always play out. Just case in point, San Diego State and Grand Canyon last night. That number got pounded, got to 8.5. Huge revenge angle. Grand Canyon literally led almost the entire game except for like the final 5 minutes of the first half, which enabled San Diego State to lead by 4 at the break. And it was all Lope's second half. Like, just because a team has to win in a revenge angle and is the better team doesn't mean they're going to. The other team can kind of play loose and free. And I think the Hoosiers can kind of shoot loose and free. There's definitely a path where Purdue does it, Purdue buries them. But I think it's just too many points. I really do.
Yeah, I feel the same. That's my first instinct here, especially with a team that can just pour in threes any given night. It's the 3-point volatility game. But if you're going to give me double digits, I'll take that number here. I think there's something about Indiana in recent years, even before Darren DeVries got here in the Mike Woodson era. These games have been closer than you expect in this 4-year run where Purdue has really been the team to beat in this league. I believe Mike Woodson went 500 against Matt Painter in his 3.5 years at Indiana. Now, does that matter? No, but there's something with this Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman, Ren Fletcher Lawyer group where they just haven't played their best against the rival here. And look, I can tell you from being in the arena last night, their heart got ripped out in that performance. It was not just a loss to Michigan. It was, we're not anywhere near as good as them. And now there's a month left, and these games are meaningless. That was Matt Painter's word at the presser pre-Michigan, said, hey, if we don't win this game, the rest of the season's honestly pretty meaningless. I don't love the vibes with that. I think this team is going to refocus in March and be every bit a dangerous team to make a run to a Final Four. But I worry for this spot because I think Indiana gets up for these games. Lamar Wilkerson is a matchup nightmare for a Purdue team that just doesn't have the perimeter defenders needed. I thought he torched them in the first matchup, and even Tucker DeVries can get out and force Trey Kaufman to guard the perimeter a little bit here. So even with an inspired performance from Purdue, I'm going to take the points with Indiana if it's anywhere close to 10.5. Okay, as we always do, let's wrap the show with our best bets. I feel like in general, we combine to have less we feel strongly about in the middle of the week here than previous episodes. So what are you locking in as your best bet?
The game we just talked about, I'll grab 10, those 10.5 points. I think it's a rivalry game for sure. I think Indiana probably cares a little more in basketball for this one. I think they'll be up for the game, and you're getting 10.5. Now, I know it's going to be a pretty solid atmosphere on Friday night, all that good stuff. But I'll take the Hoosiers to keep this inside the number.
Yeah, I think that's the smart play here. I'll just give out a different one for the sake of variation. I'll take the Maryland plus 7.5 number tonight. Diggy Coyte's got to make some shots for me. It's as gross as it feels, but Northwestern should not be laying 7.5 against anybody right now. They've had some stinkers, and we've seen Maryland beat a really good Iowa team in the last 7 days. If that team can travel, there's no way that team should be catching 7.5 against the Purple Cats. All right, there you have it. That is our midweek rendition of the 10 on the Bet River Sports Network. Reminder, this show is part of College Sports Rush, where you can also watch Sports Bettor's Paradise with Jimmy Ott every single week. We do the show every Wednesday and Friday, so we'll be back on Friday again to give you a full weekend preview in the Big Ten Conference. Thank you, Doug. Thank you to our entire team behind the scenes. We'll see you again on Friday.